Samuel Eliot Morrison, Rear Admiral, United States Naval Reserve, was an American historian noted for his works of maritime history that were both authoritative and highly readable. He received his Ph.D. from Harvard University in 1912, and taught history at the university for 40 years. He won Pulitzer Prizes for Admiral of the Ocean and Sea, A Biography of Christopher Columbus, and John Paul Jones, A Sailor's Biography. In 1942, he was commissioned by President Franklin D. Roosevelt to write a history of United States naval operations in World War II, which was published in 15 volumes between 1947 and 1962. He retired from the Navy in 1951 as a Rear Admiral. Morrison wrote the popular Oxford History of the American People, and co-authored the classic textbook The Growth of the American Republic with Henry Steele Commager. Over the course of his distinguished career, Morrison received 11 honorary doctoral degrees, including degrees from Harvard University, Columbia University, Yale University, and the University of Oxford. Morrison also garnered numerous literary prizes, military honors, and national awards from both foreign countries and the United States, including 2 Pulitzer Prizes, 2 Bancroft Prizes, the Balzan Prize, the Legion of Merit, and the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Early life. Samuel Eliot Morrison was born July 9, 1887, in Boston, Massachusetts, to John Holmes Morrison and Emily Marshall Morrison. He was named for his maternal grandfather Samuel Elliott, a historian, educator, and public-minded citizen of Boston and Hartford, Connecticut. The Elliott family, which produced generations of prominent American intellectuals, descended from Andrew Elliott, who moved to Boston in the 1660s from the English village of East Coker. The most famous of this Andrew Elliott's direct descendants was poet T.S. Eliot, who titled the second of his 4 quartets, East Coker. Morrison attended Noble and Greenough School and St. Paul's prior to entering Harvard University, where he was a member of the Phoenix SK Club. At the age of 14, he learned to sail, and soon after learned horsemanship. Both skills would serve him well in his later historical writings. He earned his Bachelor of Arts degree in 1908. After studying at the École Libre des Sciences Politiques, Morrison returned to Harvard. The scholar and historian, originally intending to major in mathematics until Albert Bushnell Hart talked him into researching some papers of an ancestor stored in his wine cellar. Morrison's Harvard dissertation was the basis for his first book, The Life and Letters of Harrison Gray Otis, Federalist, 1765 to 1848, which sold 700 copies. After earning his Ph.D. at Harvard, Morrison became an instructor in history at the University of California, Berkeley in 1912. In 1915 he returned to Harvard and took a position as an instructor. During World War I he served as a private in the U.S. Army. He also served as the American delegate on the Baltic Commission of the Paris Peace Conference until June 17, 1919. In 1922 to 1925 Morrison taught at Oxford University as the first Harmsworth Professor of American History. In 1925 he returned to Harvard, where he was appointed a full professor. One of several subjects that fascinated Morrison was the history of New England. As early as 1921 he published The Maritime History of Massachusetts, 1783 to 1860. In the 1930s Morrison published a series of books on the history of Harvard University and New England, including Builders of the Bay Colony, A Gallery of Our Intellectual Ancestors, The Founding of Harvard College in the 17th Century, 3 Centuries of Harvard, 1636 to 1936, and The Puritan Pronounce. In later years, he would return to the subject of New England history, writing The Rope Makers of Plymouth and the Story of the Old Colony of New Plymouth, and editing the definitive work of Plymouth Plantation, 1620 to 1647. During his time at Harvard, Morrison became the last professor to arrive on campus via horseback. He was chosen to speak at the 300th anniversary celebration of Harvard in 1936, and a recording of his speech is included as part of the Harvard Voices collection. In 1938, Morrison was elected as an honorary member of the Massachusetts Society of the Cincinnati. In 1940, Morrison published Portuguese Voyages to America in the 15th Century, a book that presaged his succeeding publications on the great explorer, Christopher Columbus. In 1941, Morrison was named Jonathan Trumbull Professor of American History at Harvard. For Admiral of the Ocean and Sea, Morrison combined his personal interest in sailing with his scholarship by actually sailing to the various places that Christopher Columbus was then thought to have visited. The Harvard Columbus expedition, led by Morrison and including his wife and Captain John W. McElroy, Herbert F. Hosmer, Jr., Richard S. Colley, Dr. Clifton W. Anderson, Kenneth R. Spear and Richard Spear, left on 28 August 1939 aboard the 147-foot ketch Capitana for the Azores and Lisbon, Portugal, from which they sailed on the 45-foot ketch Mariotis to retrace Columbus's route using manuscripts and records of his voyages reaching Trinidad by way of Cadiz, Madeira, and the Canary Islands. After following the coast of South and Central America, the expedition returned to Trinidad on 15 December 1939. The expedition returned to New York on 2 February 1940 aboard the United Fruit liner Veragua. The book was awarded the Pulitzer Prize in 1943. The War Years and Military Service. In 1942, Morrison met with his friend President Franklin D. Roosevelt and offered to write a history of United States Navy operations during the war from an insider's perspective by taking part in operations and documenting them. The President and Secretary of the Navy Frank Knox agreed to the proposal. On May 5, 1942, Morrison was commissioned Lieutenant Commander, U.S. Naval Reserve, and was called at once to active duty. The result of Morrison's proposal was the History of United States Naval Operations in World War II, published in 15 volumes between 1947 to 1962. Documenting everything from strategy and tactics to technology and the exploits of individuals, a work which British military historian Sir John Keegan has called the best to come out of that conflict. Issued as The Rising Sun in the Pacific in 1948, Volume 3 won the Bancroft Prize in 1949. Morrison went on to the rank of captain on December 15, 1945. On August 1, 1951, he was transferred to the honorary retired list of the Naval Reserve, promoted to Rear Admiral on the basis of combat awards. In history as a literary art, an appeal to young historians, Morrison argued that vivid writing springs from the synergy of experience and research. American historians, in their eagerness to present facts and their laudable concern to tell the truth, have neglected the literary aspects of their craft. They have forgotten that there is an art of writing history. Later years. In 1955, Morrison retired from Harvard University. He devoted the rest of his life to writing. In quick succession, Morrison wrote Christopher Columbus, Mariner, Freedom in Contemporary Society, The Story of the Old Colony of New Plymouth, 1620 to 1692, Nathaniel Holmes Morrison, William Hickling Prescott, Strategy and Compromise, and John Paul Jones, A Sailor's Biography, which earned Morrison his second Pulitzer Prize. In the early 1960s, Morrison's focus returned to his New England youth, writing the story of Mount Desert Island, Maine, One Boys Boston, 1887–1901, Introduction to Whaler Out of New Bedford, and A History of the Constitution of Massachusetts. In 1963, The Two-Ocean War was published, a one-volume abridged history of the United States Navy in World War II. In 1964, Morrison received the Presidential Medal of Freedom from President Lyndon B. Johnson. In presenting the distinguished historian with the highest civilian award in the United States, Johnson noted, "Scholar and sailor, this amphibious historian has combined a life of action and literary craftsmanship to lead two generations of Americans on countless voyages of discovery." Morrison's later years would also be devoted to books on exploration, such as The Two-Ocean War, The Caribbean as Columbus Saw It, Spring Tides, The European Discovery of America, and Samuel de Champlain, Father of New France. His research for the latter book included sailing many of the routes taken by Champlain, and tracing others by airplane. Morrison's first marriage to Elizabeth S. Green produced 4 children, one of whom, Emily Morrison Beck, became editor of Bartlett's Familiar Quotations. Elizabeth died in 1945. In 1949, Morrison married Baltimore widow Priscilla Barton. Priscilla died in 1973. Death and legacy. Morrison died of a stroke on May 15, 1976. His ashes are buried at Forest Lawn Cemetery in Northeast Harbor, Maine. He enjoyed considerable recognition during his lifetime, receiving 2 Pulitzers, 2 Bancroft Prizes, the American Academy of Arts and Sciences Emerson Thoreau Medal, and numerous honorary degrees, military awards, and honors from foreign nations. On July 19, 1979, the frigate Samuel Eliot Morrison was launched, honoring Morrison and his contributions to the United States Navy. Morrison's legacy is also sustained by the United States Naval History and Heritage Command's Samuel Eliot Morrison Naval History Scholarship. Boston's Commonwealth Avenue Mall features a bronze statue depicting Morrison in sailor's oilskin. Morrison's last known public appearance was on April 8, 1976, when he served as the ribbon cutter to open the U.S. Constitution Museum, the museum's research library, and an annual award given by the Museum for Scholarship in History are both named in his honor. The Naval Order of the United States also awards an honor in Morrison's name, the Samuel Eliot Morrison Award for Naval Literature. Criticism. Slavery. Morrison was criticized by some African American scholars for his treatment of American slavery in early editions of his book The Growth of the American Republic, which he co-wrote with Henry Steele Commager and later with Commager's student William E. Leuchtenberg. The book originated as Morrison's 2-volume Oxford History of the United States. First published in 1930, the first 2 editions of the textbook, according to these critics, echoed the thesis of American Negro slavery by Ulrich Bonnell Phillips. This view, sometimes called the Phillips School of Slavery Historiography, was considered an authoritative interpretation of the history of American slavery during the first half of the 20th century. Despite the intense criticism by some African American scholars for its alleged racist underpinnings, Phillips's theories remained authoritative, considered by many white scholars to be groundbreaking and progressive when first proposed. In 1944, the NAACP began its criticism of the growth of the American Republic. In 1950, Morrison, while denying any racist intent, he noted his daughter's marriage to the son of Joel Elias Spingarn, the former president of the NAACP, reluctantly agreed to most of the demanded changes. Morrison refused to eliminate references to slaves who were loyal and devoted to their masters because they were treated well, and to some positive, civilizing effects of the American system of slavery. Morrison also refused to remove references to stereotypes of African Americans that he believed were vital in accurately depicting the racist nature of American culture in the 19th and early 20th centuries, an era when even the most enlightened progressive thinkers routinely explained many aspects of human behavior as a result of innate racial or ethnic characteristics. In the 1962 edition of the textbook, Morrison removed additional content that these critics found offensive. Battle of Sabre Island. In his semi-official account of the Battle of Sabre Island, a disastrous defeat for the U.S. Navy in World War II, Morrison partly blamed the defeat on the failure of an Australian aircrew to inform the Americans of the approaching Japanese forces. Morrison appears to have based this story on inaccurate, now refuted, information. On October 21, 2014, the U.S. Navy issued a letter of apology to the last surviving member of the RAF Hudson crew, who had cited and duly reported the approach of the Japanese Naval Task Force. The letter states that, RADM, Morrison's criticism was unwarranted. De Go Navy. Some degree of criticism has been leveled at Morrison for his description of the Italian Regia Marina as having been considered by the British seamen as nothing but a joke, and which he explicitly called De Go Navy. Italian historian Giorgio Giorgerini wrote that this use of a racial slur is the proof of a rather gratuitous and offensive attitude towards the Italian Navy that could have been at least more prudent in its expression. William M. McBride observed that Morrison's disparaging remark was not the only example of a racist attitude from inherently superior Anglo-Saxons towards the Italians. Honours and awards. Military awards. Other honours: Order of the White Rose of Finland, Vuolo Panamericano Medal, awarded by the Republic of Cuba, Order of Merit of the Italian Republic, Order of Isabella the Catholic, Presidential Medal of Freedom, Honorary Member of the Massachusetts Society of the Cincinnati, Honorary Degrees: Trinity College, Hartford, Amherst College, Harvard University, Union College, Columbia University, Yale University, Williams College, University of Oxford, Bucknell University, Boston College, College of the Holy Cross. Literary prizes: Lubbock Prize for the founding of Harvard College and Harvard College in the 17th century. Pulitzer Prize for Admiral of the Ocean and Sea. Bancroft Prize for the Rising Sun in the Pacific. Pulitzer Prize for John Paul Jones. A Sailor's Biography. American Academy of Arts and Sciences Emerson Thoreau Medal. American Academy of Arts and Letters Gold Medal. Balzan Prize for History of United States Naval Operations in World War II. Bancroft Prize for the European Discovery of America. The Northern Voyages.